So I think the biggest thing for me personally and also for this administration is to make sure that victims actually have a voice again. And it has been said, it has been proven that victims under the last administration felt as if they were not being respected. Now the courts have taken to evaluating cases in such a way that more people are out of custody than have ever been before. The DA doesn't make a decision to let someone out of custody, the court does. We will have a data dashboard. It won't have all of the information I think that people would expect it to have. The reason is because the Alameda County District Attorney's Office created a case management system many, many years ago. That case management system was great for case management, but then data became an issue. I think if we were investing our money on the front end in education, maybe we'd be spending less money on the back end for incarceration. I think if we
Mm.
were spending more money on the front end, shoring up, families who are poor and who need support and making sure they have their needs met. But we also know that as the economy turns bad, oftentimes crime goes up because
Yeah.
socioeconomic issues affect that, and the economy is due. I mean, I do actually believe in victims' rights. I do believe that we are prosecutors, not something else. Like I'm proud to do this work on behalf of people in the community who have been the victims of crime. We're prosecutors. We are not social workers. We are not reentry specialists. We are not public defenders. I think that's a huge difference. I also think that there's a level of civility that is required to do this job.
ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਰੇਡੀਓ ਯੂਐਸਏ ਸੁਣਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਮਾਣਿਕ ਸਰੋਤਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਨਿੱਘਾ ਜੀ ਆਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਖਾਸ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਗੈਸਟ ਨੇ ਉਰਸੁਲਾ ਜੋਨਸ ਡਿਕਸਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟ ਅਟਾਰਨੀ ਨੇ ਐਲਾਮੀਡਾ ਕਾਉਂਟੀ ਦੇ ਉਹ ਰੀ-ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਪਏ ਰੀ-ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਐਲਾਮੀਡਾ ਕਾਉਂਟੀ ਤੋਂ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟ ਅਟਾਰਨੀ ਸੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਸਰੋਤੇ ਤੇ ਵਿਊਅਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ 15 AM FM ਸਟੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਐਪਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਰੇਡੀਓ ਸੈਟਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਨੈੱਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਨਿੱਘਾ ਜੀ ਆ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਖਾਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਬੜਾ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਕੁਝ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਲੇਟਡ ਉਰਸੁਲਾ ਜੋਨਸ ਡਿਕਸਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੁਝ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੁੱਛਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਰੀ-ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਬੰਧਿਤ ਕਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਰਨੀ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਰਹੀ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਸਟੈਪਸ ਉਹ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਣਗੇ. So first of all, I welcome our special guest, Ursula Jones Dickson, who's serving as District Attorney of Alameda County and is seeking re-election. Ursula, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite.
Yeah. Ursula Jones Dickson, she's born in 1968, is an attorney and a judge who has served as the 31st District Attorney of Alameda County since 2025. She's a member of Democratic Party and was appointed to Alameda County Superior Court by Governor Jerry Brown in 2013 and has served in the position until 2025. Personally, Jones Dickson was raised in Los Angeles and has received a bachelor's degree of arts in sociology from University of California, Berkeley in 1990. Later received a Juris Doctor from University of San Francisco School of Law in 1998 and has been living in Oakland since 2001. In 2024, Alameda County District Attorney Pamela Price was recalled. In January 2025, Alameda County Board of Supervisors appointed her and she has been serving as the Alameda County District Attorney since February 2025. So Ursula, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. That was a lot. No, nothing at all.
Okay, let's start with this. You're seeking re-election, and you were appointed as a DA after Pamela Price was recalled, and you are now asking voters to choose you directly. What is your own case for the job beyond saying, being a person who comes after Pamela Price? Let's start with that.
So I think the biggest thing for me personally and also for this administration is to make sure that victims actually have a voice again. And it has been said, it has been proven that victims under the last administration felt as if they were not being respected, as if their cases were not being charged. That is in fact true because There's a charging backlog of thousands of cases that we're working our way through. Many victims felt like their cases were being heard and no one was telling them what was happening. So, for me, the mandate for DAs is to do the work on behalf of victims in the community and to keep the whole process as fair and impartial as possible. And I think that is a far departure from where we were under the last administration. I think it's important to both be competent as well as non agendized. And the non agendized piece is similar to what we see in the federal government right now with the Pam Bondis of the world and
Mhm.
doing things that are not appropriate. You don't know how to do the right thing, or you choose not to do the right thing, or you're going after your political enemies, etc. And then the incompetent piece comes in when you see the result of an administration where cases aren't charged, victims feel like they're left out, cases are being dismissed, cases can't be charged because the statute of limitation is run, cases have been resentenced when they shouldn't have been, and cases have to be dismissed because they weren't handled correctly. So for me, this is a matter of making sure that we get back a professional district attorney's office. This is the office of Earl Warren, who was on the U.S. Supreme Court. It's the office of many California Supreme Court justices. It's the office of our last vice president. Like, many people have come out of the Alameda County District Attorney's Office who are extremely bright and good public servants. And so I want to follow in that tradition.
Okay. Um, you emphasize about reduction in the case backlog, restoring trust in the office, of course, by doing that. And items during, I've heard you multiple times. You say that your focus is centering victims and survivors, and pursuing cases fairly and impartially, as you just said. So, let's talk about a little bit on the numbers. You have said your office has made a major progress on clearing the backlog of cases. What numbers or approximate numbers the world should look at now, and how many cases remain, and what was the status before you came into the office, and how quickly, talking about the case speed, how quickly these cases are being charged and victims were being updated.
So, a couple of things. We got what we call the perfect storm. So, although we walked in knowing, because there had been some information in the media when the last administration was still in the DA's office about them having a huge backlog of cases, they started to try to charge those cases. They assigned people to try to do it after the media found out that was the case. Once we got there, we thought most of those cases were, they were working that backlog down. But then we walked in and found 350 cases in juvenile, 1,250 cases at our Family Justice Center. All those were domestic violence cases, 1,500 over at Echo J, which is out by Dublin. So we continued to find more cases that were backlogged. But at the same time, the police started bringing more cases to us. And I think
Hmm.
that had a little to do with the fact that victims started to feel like they could, in fact, report cases and something would happen to them. And the police were so exhausted from bringing cases to the DA's office and not knowing what happened to them and being able to tell the victims that they too started bringing those referrals to us. So we are now getting it from both sides. We're still working our way through the backlog at the same time that we're getting much larger numbers of cases coming to us, referred new cases. And so, from a numbers perspective, I can't give you exact data on that yet because we continue to receive cases now that will be ultimately not in a backlog, but if we don't charge them immediately, they too become a part of that backlog. So we're working at both sides of it. I can tell you that the numbers have gone up significantly as far as referrals to our office. I want to say for the calendar year or I don't remember, I think it may have been the calendar year, we were in like the 26,000 range of cases
Hmm.
that were brought to us just for review. And that's not counting the ones that had not already been reviewed from before. So we're reassigning more people to make sure that we have not only people to charge the cases, but after you charge the cases, they have to then there has to be an administrative process to get those complaints done and petitions done if in juvenile court. So I can tell you we're moving through those as quickly as we possibly can. We've hired back retired annuitants to help us charge so we can clean up what's left. It has been a huge undertaking, and we're still undertaking it.
Okay. When we talk about people bringing up more cases, one of the complaint I guess people were talking about is about the charging timelines. There was like a long time that a DA office would take to charge folks. Um, is there anything in plan, or you're planning to do something about committing to publishing the regular public data on regular basis from DA's office that talk about charging timelines, what are the dismissal rates, trial outcomes, or any racial disparity if those may apply?
When you say dismissal rates, you mean as it relates to charging or otherwise? So let me explain what I think the question is. When cases come to us for review,
Yeah.
we don't charge every case. We have to be able to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt to charge it. And so we have numbers on the number of cases that have come to us, say in 2025, for review, and the number of cases that have been charged. Large number, specifically of the misdemeanors, couldn't be charged beyond a reasonable doubt, or they were diverted away from the criminal justice system through diversion programs. That happens as well. We do have that data. It should also be stated that I think the timelines for charging are interesting because it depends on whether or
Mhm.
not a case is an in custody case or out of custody case. Now the courts have taken to evaluating cases in such a way that more people are out of custody than have ever been before. The DA doesn't make a decision to let someone out of custody, the court does. And so the case law is very specific that the court should be looking specifically at whether or not this person can pay what is going to be set for bail, which has never been the case before. So we see people committing crimes, coming into custody, and then being released from custody, coming in and then being released. So as a result of that, now we are seeing more folks out of custody, which makes it more difficult to resolve those cases. When people get out of custody, they don't want to go to trial quickly. They decide to do what we call waive time, which puts their case behind the cases that are more important. Those in custody cases have to be charged within a 48-hour period of time. And so those are the priority always, because if not, those people have to
Mhm.
be released from custody. If they're released by the court, it is what it is. But when they're in custody for the more serious and violent cases, when they are in custody, we charge those first. And then after that, we are looking to move the cases along that are oldest because we want to make sure we don't have a statute of limitation problem. So
Makes
as it
sense.
relates to data, we will have a data dashboard. It won't have all of the information I think that people would expect it to have. The reason is because the Alameda County District Attorney's Office created a case management system many, many years ago. That case management system was great for case management, but then data became an issue. We cannot
Hmm.
extricate ourselves out of the system that is connected with the court system and others, like they're feeding one another, nor do we have the money to purchase a system separate from the system that is a homegrown system. So that case management system requires us to hire people who are coders to
Mm.
code for information. Like if you were to send a CPRA request, a public records request to us, we have to then assign it to a coder to pull that information out of our system. And there's really no way to fix that issue. We keep getting updates on our homemade system, but it'll never be more than a case management system that we have to kind of fight to make sure we can get information out of. So short
Okay.
answer is yes, we have data. We can get it. It takes us longer to get it than some of the newer systems that are in place. But yes.
Yeah. So essentially, more transparency adds the trust to any office. In your case, the DA office, that would be helpful. So thank you for that. Let's talk about a little bit more on the same line when we talk about the trials, racial disparities. Personally, what do you think? Where is the line between being tough on a serious crime and contributing to over incarceration? Because that's also one of the most discussed issues in last few years, in let's say last decade or so. I mean, what is your opinion about it?
I mean, my opinion is I think we have to start, I should say, stop moving the goalposts for victims. Do I think that we are now in a place and space in California where people are over incarcerated? I do not. There are more
Hmm.
people out of custody than, they're resentencing folks at a higher rate. Parole happens now. And the reason I say moving the goalposts is specifically for this reason. Victims will contact us and say, this person was convicted for killing my loved one, and they were going to spend 25 years to life in prison. And now all of a sudden, after 20 years, this person is up for parole. Why did that happen?
Hmm.
Because the laws continue to change. But what has not changed, and I find odd, is that the legislature has not decided that they're just going to change how much time somebody can spend in custody for, say, a murder, right? Instead, that's still in place. But what they've changed is when somebody's convicted, we say, here's the sentence, 25 years to life. But what we don't say is, but the laws changed so that that doesn't really mean 25 years to life. It
Hmm.
means at this point, this person could potentially get parole because of these things. So, do I think that over incarceration is an issue? Sure. Do I think that other countries have this level of incarceration? No. Do I think that that's an excuse to allow folks to, specifically for serious and violent crimes, to be out of custody and to do that over and over again? No, I don't. And I don't think victims believe that as well. And so I think, if I'm an old teacher, so that was really my first job out of college. I think if we were investing our money on the front end in education, maybe we'd be spending less money on the back end for incarceration. I think if we
Hmm.
were spending more money on the front end, shoring up, families who are poor and who need support, and making sure they have their needs met so that parents can go to work and do all the things they need to do to take care of their children, then maybe we wouldn't be paying for this on the back end. Do I think it's a conversation to be had? Yes. Do I think California is over incarcerated right now? No. And do I
Hmm.
think even at the juvenile justice system, I think there may be 55, 60 kids there versus years ago, there are over 330 beds there. But we haven't, during COVID, we had like 24 kids there. Like, you continue to look at how many less children are in custody, but what do the crime rates look like? And now they're coming down, but that's across the country. That's not anything new here in Alameda County, it's across the
Hmm.
country. But we also know that as the economy turns bad, oftentimes crime goes up because
Yeah.
socioeconomic issues affect that. And the economy is due for a little bit of a correction. So we'll see what that looks like.
Yeah. Economy is a major driver. Let's talk about police accountability. As per the report published by KQED, you said you respect law enforcement, but also says that DA's office must pursue the justice if an officer breaks the law and the case can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So DA's office, as the nature of the job, has to work closely with the police, but it also has to review the police misconduct. How do you maintain that relationship without becoming too close to the agencies that you may potentially investigate?
I mean, I think anybody who's in law enforcement knows what the rules are.
Yeah.
It is why the DA is called the top law enforcement officer in the county, although we're not law enforcement, because we also have to enforce the law as it relates to law enforcement. And so um, I think the conversations are had. Everybody knows that being a police officer is a very difficult job. And I respect
Yeah.
people who run for danger when we run away, whether that be firefighters or police officers. I also know that with that comes a responsibility that you have to other people, right? And if you, as a police officer, do something that harms another person without cause, just cause, or you do something that is not ethical, somebody has to police that too. And that happens to be the district attorney. Now, what people don't understand is sometimes cops will do things and people are like, I don't think that was right. That doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily mean a crime was committed, right? So the question is there a crime committed? Back to what the DA does. Is there a crime committed? And if there is a crime committed for anybody committing a crime, can we prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? That's always the assessment that we're making. And so going forward, I think that the conversation when I walked in the door for this job was really around there was no communication with the last administration with the Chiefs Association at all. So building that relationship again, but also reminding them that if anything goes awry, I'm the one who has to review that, and I will do that without any apologies. And they know that. And I think that communication is the important communication to have.
Hmm. Okay. Um, in your own words, what's the clearest difference between you and Pamela Price? It was very contentious recall. I recall. So, what is the clearest difference in your own words is between you and Pamela Price?
I mean, I do actually believe in victims' rights. I do believe that we are prosecutors, not something else. Like I'm proud to do this work on behalf of people in the community who have been the victims of crime. We're prosecutors. We are not social workers. We are not reentry specialists. We are not public defenders. I think that's a huge difference. I also think that there's a level of civility that is required to do this job and do it well. It requires that you know the work. I was a prosecutor for 15 years, that you understand the fair and impartial nature or what we're chasing. We're chasing fair and impartial, right? Always. We're never perfect, but we're always chasing that. That is what a judge does as well. I've done that job. And I've also worked in these courts in Alameda County my entire legal career. So the difference is there is no other candidate that has this level of experience in this race or otherwise, that would come for this job. And so I think it's important to be competent again and non-agendized. There's nobody in out there who's committed a crime that I'm connected to in such a way that it would be an agenda issue. If that crime is committed, I'm going to review it and do the right thing. And I believe in doing the right thing over and over and over again. If you keep doing that, then the rest will come together.
Okay. So my last question to you is, let's say at the end of your term, what are the three measurable results that voter can use to decide whether you succeeded or not? In other words, what numbers should improve under your leadership?
That's a good question. I think that one, and when we say numbers measurables, I think one of this is more of an EQ. I want people to feel like their district attorney is going to fight on behalf of victims. I want them to say she was about the good fight on behalf of victims, and she made sure that her troops were as well. I want to make sure that we don't have a case backlog. I think that's really important because attached to every case is a victim. And so that means if we're not charging cases or at least reviewing them and letting victims know that a case is not being charged, each of those individuals is not getting their day in court and they don't feel heard and seen. So that backlog, appropriate charging is going to be a really big deal for me, making sure we're within reasonable numbers for our charging. And I think the third piece is to build up a district attorney's office again that are some of the best trial lawyers in the country. That's what we came from. That's what we will be. We have over 320 cases where someone has passed away, either by way of a manslaughter or a homicide. 260 plus of those are murder cases or homicide cases. I want people to feel like we know how to try those cases, we know how to do it well, we know how to resolve those cases and do it well, those serious and violent cases, and that people know that when they're in the hands of this DA's office, if this office can't get it done, it can't be done on behalf of victims. And so I think those
Okay.
for me are the measurables, and those are the most important things.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any last comments for viewers and listeners of Punjabi Radio USA in the last few minutes?
Yes, register to vote and vote. The last day to register to vote is May 18th. You can go down to the register of voters. Please do so. Your voice matters. It's counted. And don't let anybody tell you any different. Please get out and vote.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ursula, for your time. I know you're very busy, but we appreciate your time to be on this show at the late hour. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you for the invite. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, you as well, and we wish you all best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.